This is Hunt Nebraska, the official podcast for insight into Nebraska's hunting and shooting sports community. Be sure to give us a follow on Facebook, our space for sharing stories, information, tips, and techniques. Now, Hunt Nebraska. And welcome back, folks, to another Hunter Hangout here at the Hunt Nebraska cabin. We appreciate you taking us along for the ride or into your office or home, maybe even on the way to the hunting fields and the deer woods, perhaps, here in the great state, because it is that time of the year. We are now pretty much past Halloween. I'm not going to lie to folks. We are recording this on Halloween, but there is no way, Michael, we're getting this put in the can, edited, and out there before that.
You'd have to work pretty fast on that.
Yeah, and it's not happening. It's not happening. It's already Halloween afternoon and all that type of stuff. We do have the Halloween candy here, though. Now, if you're looking at us on YouTube, you already know we've got a unique face on here. New face, maybe not unique, but we've got TJ Walker from our wildlife division in studio to talk a little bit about Access Day, which is a big, always something we're interested in is the hunting public. But we've got our good buddy from the National Wild Turkey Federation, Michael. You got me, Hershy, in here as usual as well. But I've got to ask, because TJ, I got made fun of today. I've got a mixed bag here. It's got Milky Way, Snickers, Twix, M&M's. Somebody pulled out a bag of Skittles out of it as well earlier. I got made fun of for grabbing a Milky Way. Can you imagine?
Nope.
The audacity. What is your favorite Halloween candy?
Milky Way is perfectly acceptable. So far, I've grabbed a Butterfinger and a Twix, but
You got a Butterfinger out of that bag?
Well, there was one sitting on the table.
Oh, okay.
That's left over from last week.
I'm a Twix fan, too. What would be your favorite? If you had to decide, you had kids, if you were going to raid their Halloween treats, what would you go for?
I'm a sugar guy. I like the hard candies or the Skittles or
really
Laffy Taffy, things like that.
Oh, yeah. You got a favorite flavor of Laffy Taffy?
Always red.
Red.
Yeah. Red's my favorite everything. Red's my favorite color. Red's my favorite flavor. Cherry, obviously.
Okay. All right. What, Michael, have we asked you that? I don't think we've asked you that.
I'm pretty sure we discussed this like 2 episodes ago. But,
it's
popular,
right?
for those who didn't tune in last time, Payday, I think, is what I went with.
Oh, that's right.
Paydays,
I do recall now you say that. Mine now is still Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. And we did talk about that because the different shapes taste better.
Yeah.
The regular size ones are great, TJ, but when you turn it into a pumpkin, for some reason it's better.
Or the eggs.
The eggs,
Easter,
the Christmas tree. Yeah.
Yep, they're better.
What Absolutely. Is it? And what's unique about that is it was on accident. Reese's peanut butter doesn't taste like any other peanut butter, right? Because they accidentally burnt a batch when they were cooking it. They burnt the peanut butter. And luckily, a happy accident, because that's what gives it its unique taste. But we're not here to talk about candy completely. Anyway, is there any Halloween candy you won't eat?
I don't like coconut.
Me neither. All right.
Yeah.
Almond Joy, Mounds, blah, blah, blah. And you'll eat just about anything.
I don't mind coconut. No, and just about anything candy-wise, yeah, I'd say that's probably a pretty fair assessment.
That's one of the foods that I really wanted to like, especially growing up watching Gilligan's Island. I thought it'd be so cool to drink out of a coconut and drink coconut milk and all that stuff. And then I tried it and just like,
see, the taste taste is fine. It's you start eating a couple pieces or a couple Almond Joys and just the texture just starts getting to you. It's just weird.
The texture, it tastes like the old suntan oils that they had. I mean, it smells like it. Ugh. Anyway, to each their own.
Also not a black licorice fan.
Oh, I can get on board with that. That black licorice is not good.
Did you guys get a lot of black licorice when you were trick-or-treating as a kid?
No.
Some. Which was more than enough.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be many. You remember it quite a bit. Now, you, TJ, and both of us kind of grew up in the time of there were homemade treats at the time. Did you ever get popcorn balls?
Oh, yeah. Popcorn balls, brownies, cookies, all sorts of things. Yeah.
I still got popcorn. I remember getting popcorn balls.
Nowadays, you make sure my kids were, okay, these houses give out the full size candy bars. We're hitting that, and I was all for it as well. Growing up, we had, folks, I think I mentioned this last time, we had the house that always gave out the full caramel apple right there on the stick. Now, didn't fit into your we used paper grocery bags or plastic pumpkins. A couple of folks had that, but it didn't hold enough candy. It wouldn't fit in there, so you had to stop and eat it. on the way, which the next few houses as your lips stick together. But the good times. But we're not here to talk about that, though. As you've heard many times before, folks, food and hunting go hand in hand. We're here to talk about access, and we are on the verge of a whole bunch of good things happening. Upland bird season is already now in full swing. It opened up just days ago. Some decent reports from around the state. Unique reports, seeing all the snow in some of the pictures, though. TJ.
Yeah, we got an early snowstorm out there in parts of the areas. So.
Yeah. It's Nebraska. Life on the high plains. You never know what's going to happen. I bet some of those spots hit 70 yet before the fall's completed.
Oh, yeah. Possibly this week.
This week. Now, did either of you guys make it out for a bird hunt for the opening weekend?
I decided to go waterfowl hunting instead.
Oh, how'd you do?
We did okay.
Yeah.
We got a few ducks each. So.
Had to be a good push with all of a sudden. We went from, I was telling Leslie, archery deer hunting on one Friday, 85 degrees. I realized I don't have great archery hunting clothes, camo anyway, at least not to be able to stay decent and cool enough in 80 degrees when the sun's up. And then about a week later, we were down into, hard freezes and all that stuff. I didn't have enough. But the ducks and geese had to get pushed. I know I was hearing a lot of white-fronted geese flying over one morning when I headed out to the deer woods.
It was a pretty good push of divers. Saturday, Sunday.
Nice. Yeah. Those are fun, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're fast, hard to hit.
They are fast, yeah.
I made it out for a little bit of upland bird season, and to me, folks, that is pheasants. I love prairie chickens. They're kind of the epitome. I'll put up with sharp-tailed grouse because they're just cruel. Their whole goal is to walk hunters to death. Quail just scare the snot out of me still, and I can't hit them anyway, so I don't shoot at them very often. Even when we do encounter them. But I got to say it, my dog now, I lost one this last year just before she turned 15. We oftentimes celebrated her birthday on Halloween. We just kind of associate them with holidays, easier to remember for me. My other dog, a Springer Spaniel, 13. So he's really slowing down. He was able to hunt a part of a field, and luckily we were able to find some pheasants in that. I heard some other shots going on around too. So there must be some success going on there. But November firearm season just around the corner. Like you said, waterfowl season's going on. We've had archery deer going on for some time. And folks, if you haven't gotten a hold of your copy yet of the Public Access Atlas hard copy, make sure you do. One for each vehicle, one for the den or the living room there at home, so you can plot and plan there, and also have one once you accidentally forget that on the kitchen table. You've got one in the car or truck. But also, big push for the online version, because this goes to print when? July?
Those go in August.
In August?
Yeah, well, they head out to print, I guess, late July, and they come out in August.
Because I remember we always try to get them around the state fair time at the end of August. But, we still have some folks, and we'll talk about it here, adding to this with the stubble program and all that. But this has been going on for some time. Now, you'll oftentimes hear us talk about open fields and water, which is is that the in-house name for it? Or is that the national name, Open Fields and Water?
That's our name for our current program, the Open Fields and Waters program. Before that, we had the Conservation Reserve Program Management Access Program.
That was CRP MAP.
CRP MAP.
And how did those two differ? Because that's what we had when I first got here.
CRP MAP was almost entirely focused on CRP. We did enroll some adjacent, grasslands or a little bit of cropland here or there. However, the Open Fields and Waters, we've really expanded. We still have the CRP and a big focus there, a big push for enrollment of CRP. But along with that, we also do a lot of acres of natural grassland, native grassland, rangeland, woodlands, wetlands, anything we can get into the program, including some fishing opportunities, farm ponds, streams, things like that. There's
the water part. So CRP MAP, when I think of CRP, Conservation Reserve Program, my mind always goes to upland birds. Is that what a lot of that focus was early on in the CRP MAP
Absolutely.
years?
Yeah, it was primarily pheasants with the bonus of quail. Now we do all sorts of enrollments that are really targeting like prairie grouse, mule deer, pronghorn. In some areas, we even hope to see some elk access, like in the Les Canyons there, southeast of North Platte. So,
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool. So this has got a little bit more diverse focus now.
Yeah.
And access is something that, and Michael, you can kind of set the stage on this, being the R3 coordinator, shared position between the Nebraska Game and Parks and the National Wild Turkey Federation. Access for hunters, whether it's current hunters, those looking to become hunters or thinking about it, as well as those that were, access kind of is important to them.
Yeah, access is the driving factor for a lot of people who want to get out, especially if they want to hunt something different than what they already hunt. They might only have, private land access to, a couple different, say, they hunt a farm that's managed for turkeys. Well, they want to try hunting pheasants, but they're not managed the same way. And so you want to, maybe the habitat you have access to isn't necessarily the best for that. So you don't see pheasants. And it's like, well, I want to go hunt pheasants. Well, say there's, 150 acres of open fields and waters, at a couple different spots just down the road from you. It makes a world of difference. But a lot of people who don't get out, one of their top reasons, and it's like, I would love to hunt that, but the main reason they don't have the access, don't know where to go.
And here in Nebraska, TJ, we're over 90% privately owned.
97.
97%. That's the score I love to see on the top of my geometry test.
Right.
There in school. But so 97, so 3% public ownership. Mm-hmm. And I'm guessing not all three of those percents are open to public access.
Nope. There's some that are, places like state park areas, like right around the cabins and stuff like that aren't open. We have done pretty well at opening up a lot of our state park and state recreation areas to some access.
Which is kind of cool. And folks, that's why you see that designation oftentimes. I get folks from out of state coming, well, why do you have state parks and state historical parks and state recreation areas? And that's part of it, right? Because state recreation areas oftentimes have something outside of the main Memorial Day to Labor Day timeframe open to hunting access.
Correct.
Which is pretty cool. State parks, I think oftentimes by either state statute or something along those lines, can't unless we make it a special exception.
Correct.
For those, right? Mm-hmm. Fort Robinson, I think they've got some. We've got some special seasons on the eastern side of the state as well for certain limited access for different critters. And so in a state like Nebraska, especially if you don't have access, if you don't farm, you don't ranch, you don't have family in that or good friends and connections there, it can be probably a little bit intimidating. So this is pretty cool. Access open to the public. So I'm guessing we're also seeing a few more people relying on those public access areas because we're becoming, even in Nebraska, we're becoming more, I shouldn't say urbanized because it might not, our listeners that come from more populated states might think, well, what town besides Omaha or Lincoln's all that's densely populated, but we're still kind of moving towards those cities.
Yeah. We've done some surveys and, especially like with our upland game bird hunters, I believe it's something like 35-40% that hunt exclusively on open fields and waters and other public land, and then it's like 60-some% that hunt some private and some of these properties as well.
So now, before we go any further, have you guys been on any of these public accessible lands?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all I hunt. Yeah. So
I haven't been on any open fields and waters yet, but I've been on some NRD lands.
Some NRD, which are some of our partner grounds or wildlife management areas. I got to say, the more I hunt, every year it goes by, I probably spend a little bit more. It probably started out, 10, 20% on public ground when I first started hunting. As I've moved in life and life phases have changed and coming in and out, I've relied a little bit more on some publicly accessible lands. Now, TJ, you used to live in kind of that southwest part of the state, which is known for a lot of pheasants down there. It's still one of our strongholds. And some good amount of CRP map back in the day and probably open fields and water areas now.
Absolutely. That Southwest District, areas southwest of North Platte especially, but south and west also, definitely some of the highest concentrations of public access opportunities on private lands. You get up to other parts of the state, we have a lot of federal land. But down there we have, our southwest reservoirs plus a lot of open fields and waters.
So what's your favorite memory on one of these walk-on access lands?
I was thinking about that. My son's first Bob Whites, they were running in front of us, and I told him he had to let him get up before he shot, and they might have been 6 inches or a foot off the ground when he pulled the trigger. You
actually saw him running?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he doubled on those, so that was pretty.
That's pretty cool.
His first and second, just like that. About how old was he? Do you recall?
He was 12 or 13, I think.
12 or 13.
Yeah, somewhere in there. Yeah.
Whew.
It was pretty sweet, and we were actually turkey hunting, and he had turkey loads, so one of them didn't look very
Oh,
good.
yeah.
The second one that got hit looked better.
You can make a quail disappear with that
Yeah.
that combination.
Yeah.
Now this wasn't the first time by any means, Michael, but I can remember I had a buddy travel in from out of state, and just on a whim, him and I, it was spring turkey season. I just picked a spot on the map, having driven past it, TJ. Just assuming, well, there's probably turkeys on that stretch. And I looked like a genius. I mean, I really did. I mean, it was already mid-season, early May, I believe it was, when he came to town. He got into my house. We crashed late that night and got up early the next morning. He probably got like 2.5, 3 hours of sleep. And we headed out, and it was a ways from the house, but just like, we'll give it a try. We're actually going to go down towards southwest part of the state to chase turkeys down there, but we had some time, so we stopped off there because we knew we weren't going to just drive as soon as he got there. And I kid you not, it was just like we're getting ready there in the dark, and it's just starting to get a little, that time where it's not pitch dark, it's a little gray. You still can't see colors or anything, but it's just, you can tell that the light is coming. And my buddy Mike said, "Are there turkeys here?" And before I could say, I hope so, one gobbled. I mean, it just like, yep, right there.
I knew he was there the
And
whole
he's
time.
like, that doesn't sound too far. And I agreed, just like, no, we don't have to go too far. And next thing I know, another one gobbles, and it's a little closer yet. And he looks at me and he says, "Do you want to go after one of those?" And it's like, well, yeah, that's what we're here for.
That's why we're here.
So we had a little pop-up blind because he moves around a lot. And so we went, got that set up on the field, and we played with those turkeys. Unfortunately, they had a whole host of hens. I don't know how many hens, and you could see those hens flying out of the trees just as soon as they could, and those toms were gobbling and strutting up on the branch. And I think they kind of fell out of the trees, and the hens caught them. I think that's really what happened. I don't think the toms had to work too hard at all. And we kind of saw them parade around, and they kind of wandered away from us. We got a nice show, but nothing that came in range. And you could tell about that time we realized it's not happening, that my buddy Mike just like, oh, darn it. And then one gobbled behind us. And he was a long ways away, but just like, oh, no, there's other turkeys here. And every time we called, you could hear that other tom getting closer and closer and closer, and just like, this is going to happen. This is pretty cool. And sure enough, a few minutes later, that big old tom pops out. He was all by himself. He was pretty lonely. And that was our first clue when my buddy went and was like, all right, he's in range. When you're ready. Nothing happened at all. Anytime, Mike. Nothing. Mike, you going to shoot? I'm trying. So I had to slowly, he dropped his gun. I gave him mine, and he shot that gobbler. He'd been in Nebraska for probably 6 hours at most, hunted for about an hour and a half, and he thought, man, this is this is pretty cool. And is this a special farm you got here? He's like, nope, this is one of those open fields and water area. This is open to everybody. Well, why are there turkeys here? And it's because our guys and gals do a pretty good job of finding some of that habitat out there.
One of the unwritten rules of our program, all of us public land hunt. Honestly, we all do. And one of the unwritten rules is that we don't enroll anything we wouldn't hunt ourselves.
Ooh, so, I like that.
Sounds like a good rule to live by there.
If we pull up to a property and we go, yeah, we're probably not going to enroll that. If we pull up and think it's someplace we'd like to spend some time, then we will enroll that.
Oh, that's pretty cool. And let's talk about enrollment, because these are private lands. Mm-hmm. And here in Nebraska, to access private lands, as a lot of our listeners already know, you've got to have permission. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily written permission unless the landowner requires that, but you have to have permission to access it for anything, hunting including. And so these areas that we've got in the open fields and waters that are private lands, you guys have kind of already knocked on the door and gotten that permission. Kind of walk us through that.
Well, at times we'll do mailings out to landowners to see if we can get some interest that way. Mailings with our contact information. They contact us, reach out to see what we have to offer and see if we can figure out a deal. A lot of times it's actually people we're doing habitat management with as well. So we'll do some cedar removal for them on rangeland, or we'll do some work on their CRP to increase the diversity, things like that. Maybe a prescribed fire in a woodland, where we're assisting them with a habitat management need. And then, hey, by the way, would you consider allowing public access for for an annual payment? So that's,
and some of them say yes. I mean, that's the beauty of it.
a lot of them say no. Mostly the people that have, friends and family that hunt, they hunt themselves. And we totally get that. In a lot of cases, it's easier out west because the land ownerships are bigger. They'll enroll part of their land and not other parts, things like that. So it's a lot easier out west, but we still find a fair amount here.
And there are individual farmers. There's family farmers and stuff and ranchers that allow access. But there's also partners, because I know out west you've got some of those canyon areas as well. Is that the same program, or is that a little bit different?
That's the same program. It's part of the Open Fields and Waters program, just a different habitat designation than the canyons type stuff.
I mean, some of those, Michael, I don't know if you've seen that, where all of a sudden, you've got miles, it seems like, sections in there that are just full. There's some right there.
Map sheet 19. Yep.
My goodness. I mean, you just think of this. All those little squares in there are what, a mile?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so you think, here's a mile, here's a mile. I mean, you could almost walk
That's a few sections there.
In that landscape, you wouldn't walk too dang many miles because it's very rugged.
It looks flat on here, though,
Yeah.
TJ.
The whole Nebraska's flat and boring thing, I used to always tell people, take a right or a left at Maxwell. One way you go into the sand hills, the other way you go into the canyons.
You go into the
neither
Cedar
one are
Canyons.
flat and boring.
You get about 5 miles off of I-80 in either direction, and you'll find out real quick Nebraska is not flat and boring.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Now, is there a common thread? I mean, obviously, like you said, individuals, groups, this and that. Is there a type of landowner that's more likely to be part of this program?
It's mostly people that, either don't hunt themselves or don't have, friends and family that hunt. Like I said, out west, sometimes they'll enroll some and keep some for that. But it's also, a lot of these guys would probably let anybody that knocked on their door. They'd probably let them hunt, but this is just a service, a way for us to make that connection, make it easier.
And you say it, knock on the door, and I've done plenty of that in my lifetime and had some success with it as well. But nowadays, just finding where that landowner is,
it's getting harder and harder because a lot of the landowners live in town, and they, the house on the property is actually a tenant that has, no rights to the property, can't actually give you permission. And on top of it, let's be honest, I mean, our society, we're not, we don't talk to the person on the other side of the picket fence at times, and then you're asking people to make that connection, go out and knock or go out and scout 2 months in advance when we're all, busy and don't have a lot of time to spare. And so it's really just about providing a service and getting these spots on the map where people can go to recreate.
Well, and I know, especially early on, I'd grab a hold of this when I went pheasant hunting, and we'd head down to the Southwest Stronghold for upland birds. It was kind of based on, all right, if we can't find a door to knock on, where am I still going to be okay finding enough access to chase pheasants? And finding a spot was never difficult, thanks to the Atlas here, and I know that's grown. But one of the unique spots that I found early on that a lot of people overlook is the stubble. Mm-hmm. That is oftentimes enrolled in that. And folks, that's not even in the hard copy.
We do produce a stubble guide that is a hard copy that comes out
later. It's an add-on
later.
to this, though, right?
Right, and it only includes the map sheets where we have, at least a reasonable amount of stubble enrolled. So it's mostly the Southwest and the Southern Panhandle. Because
stubble, I mean, you see corn stubble, but it's not the same. We're talking wheat stubble.
It's tall wheat stubble or milo.
Yep.
Tall wheat stubble, it has to average 14 inches in height. That's actually enough for a pheasant to, reasonably hide in. Some years the stubble isn't very thick. It's kind of a little sparse.
Yeah.
Some years there's not a lot of pheasant use in the stubble. And then you have a year like 2012 where we had really good winter conditions before it for the wheat growth. But then we had a drought year, and half the CRP got hayed. The other half wasn't very good, and we literally had all of our birds in the stubble, and we couldn't get hunters to hunt it.
See, and that's the thing, folks, if you're listening here and you're headed down to that area where there is stubble, keep an eye on it. And not all the stubble, it's just like grass. Not all the habitat's the same, even though it's labeled the same. But, Michael, I had a time, Leslie was with me, and I think our son was bird hunting old enough at that time. We were down in that area, and we'd kind of driven around looking at some of the open fields and water areas. Some of them were CRP map too. back in the day. Do we still have some of that, or is it just kind of enrolled in this program now?
It's encompassed within this now. We have some of the same landowners and some of the same fields in there. Yeah,
and that must have been what it was. And there was this beautiful chunk of grassland. CRP had some mix, had some diversity. I mean, it was beautiful. Didn't hurt that there were just rooster pheasants walking alongside the road and watching all the vehicles go by and all that stuff. And we were out there the day before the opening day. Now, folks, if you've taken part in pheasant hunting, the busiest day is opening day, especially that morning. And we hadn't thought about just like, all right, we're starting there. I mean, you couldn't have drawn it up any better. It's like TJ himself drew up what pheasant habitat looked like, and there it was. What we didn't plan on is we got there plenty early, because here in Nebraska, 30 minutes before sunrise is when shooting hours start. We thought, all right, we'll get out there, even a half an hour before that, just watch the sun come up, get ready, relax, so we don't have to rush things and just enjoy everything that's going on. It's supposed to be calm and kind of crisp in the morning. We'd probably hear some cackles. What I didn't expect was about the 8 or 9 other trucks that were already around that area. Yeah. And they were every little spot you could think of attacking that. And we kind of both looked at each other, and I think Leslie just said, keep driving. There's folks already here. We're not going to cringe on them. We don't need to add to the excitement. It'll just frustrate everybody involved. So we went down and found on one of those stubble guides just down the road. I mean, not even a mile and a half away, Michael, a stubble field. And we thought, we'll go try that. We'll just, because it's there and we don't have to travel much further. Not a soul there. Nobody. Mile and a half away, we could still see truck headlights coming down the road, stopping. You could see they were having that same conversation and moving on. Right. Where those other groups were, nobody ever came past us, TJ. And we're sitting there listening to pheasants cackle in that stubble, thinking, there's just as many here as there was back there. We had nobody else pass us by that day. I think we kicked up some pheasants. I think we took like 3 roosters out of that field and had probably a couple others we should have had. And then we decided we're going to the next stubble field. Nobody had touched it. And it was just interesting watching everybody stick by. Well, this is pheasant habitat. We're going to stay by the grass.
Everybody likes the CRP.
Yeah, so, they do.
That's what gets associated most with it. So that's what everybody goes for.
Yeah. And here in Nebraska, you got to learn to adapt. It's kind of like if you're from eastern Nebraska and you're used to chasing turkeys around the hardwoods and the river bottoms, out there, those turkeys show up where there's not a tree for a mile. Right. They know how to move around. And I've found those pheasants have figured out how to use those stubble fields to their advantage.
A lot of times there's hidden pockets in there as well, like little canyon fingers that come up into those stubble fields, or a playa wetland or something where there's a little pocket of weedy cover or grassy cover. Yeah,
interesting.
And that's usually where the quail are in those situations.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that. What's cool about the Southwest and some of these areas is my brother took his first prairie chicken in one of those. We were pheasant hunting down there again. All of a sudden, he just like, what's that noise? And you could hear these chickens, and they cluck. I don't know how best to describe it. Just you can hear it for a
kind of a
ways.
clucky purr.
Yeah,
or something.
Yeah, and it was kind of funny because you could hear them just like, those are prairie chickens. They're right up there. Well, there's a sign right there. It says, open to hunting permitted, I believe it said, the yellow signs.
Yep.
Just like, we can chase those. So we had to plan it out and all that type of stuff. And my brother had never been around prairie grouse at all. Not at that point. He'd been around sharp-tails, but it was way up in the Dakotas where that's all it was. And we'd already taken a couple of pheasants. He's thinking, how am I going to be able to tell these prairie chickens from a pheasant, from a hen pheasant? They're all brown, right? And it's, once you get an idea of it, what are some of the cues you look for between a hen pheasant and like a prairie chicken?
Well, in flight, from a distance, the prairie chickens will kind of wobble.
Yeah, they do.
As they're flying, whereas pheasants just stay level. So you can tell that, like if one's flying at you, you'll see it do this little wobble back and forth and then glide, wobble back and forth and then glide. From the front, prairie chickens have barring on their chest, where the hen pheasant tends to have more spotted look. Prairie chickens are also darker on the front than pheasants. And then on the back, they also have that similar barring and then a dark tail that's kind of squared off as they're flushing, or round if it's spread. Yep. Whereas the pheasant tail is obviously longer. Now, when it comes to sharp-tailed grouse, they have a pointy tail, but it's not as long as a pheasant.
Not as pronounced. You're right. And I think a pheasant is making a lot of noise. They almost use that scare tactic as they're coming up to kind of confuse the predators. Sometimes I just look up and there's prairie chickens already on wing, so to speak.
Yeah.
A little softer flesh. But he was nervous about that the whole time. And as we were getting closer, and folks, if you haven't chased either prairie grouse, when they're out in a pasture, and this was short grass. I don't know if it had been grazed or just short grass prairie that I remember. But it's one of those things that you kind of have to sneak them. It's not like you're working the thick cover with the dog and then the wind in their nose. They were on one side of this peak in this pasture. We had to come up from the back side and try to sneak up. And of course, they've always
downwind side.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's where they like to be.
You've got some sentries. They're using their eyeballs a lot more, and a couple took off. Like, oh, those are prairie chickens. We got moving a little faster, and then they just started popping.
Yep.
And I got a shot. My brother just a little bit out of range, and we get to the very top, and what pops up but a hen pheasant.
Yeah.
And he looked at me like this was a whole setup the whole time. And I think the only thing that saved me from having to walk back to eastern Nebraska rather than driving, because he had the keys, was one lone holdout prairie chicken. A nice male, because you could see the pinnae, those
Neck
what looked like ears.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know what, he must have watched the whole thing going on and thought we were going to disappear or what, but he held tight. We turned around and started walking back. He jumps up at 20 yards in front of my brother, and he got his first one. So it was quite fun to say the least. Now, how many acres do we have this year in this program?
385,000 ish, which is a new record. Fortunately, we actually dipped a little bit last year, but we bounced back up this year. So
that's pretty good. And I got to assume some of those areas got some more rain, some more snows last winter. I was out by Clear Creek Wildlife Management Area, and that place is dense. It's got density like I haven't seen before.
Yeah.
So I got to assume some of these other areas are going to be a little tougher to walk.
Probably a little bit, but they're still fairly easy. Most of our CRP fields aren't that dense. You know, some of the stuff in eastern Nebraska gets pretty tall and rank at times when you're walking through that 6-7 foot tall switchgrass. But for the most part, we try to keep the habitats pretty diverse through management, and you know that leaves a little more openness in there, as well as more weedy cover, which I think is easier to walk through than the dense grass.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I like diversity. Every time I see a field, they're the same size, same look, whatever, if they've got a little mixture in there. And I don't know if the birds pick up on that at the same way, but I seem to find more success.
Oh, yeah.
Getting those mixtures. Like you're saying, that little weedy patch there in the stubble field. They got food, and they got a place where they can kind of loaf and hide, and maybe even
It's almost like bass fishing.
Yep.
Pick out in a big old open flat. There's a stump out in this grass flat. Guarantee there's bass on
there
that
you
stump.
go.
So, Daryl Bauer would appreciate the analogy.
There you go. Now, and access is big to the agency, because I know that, like you said, we pay for access on these. It's not a lot, perhaps, but at the same token, we're very fortunate that the landowners and the groups that are part of this program are as generous and interested in seeing people out there as well. About how much in a given year do we spend to get access for hunters? Just to show them kind of what the agency is working with.
People are going to love this number, but keep in mind you divide it by 385,000. We're looking at about 1.9 million.
1.9 million
in landowner payments to payments to landowners. This next coming, we make those payments in early spring, following the hunting seasons. So
yeah.
Well,
that just goes to show you how the importance that our agency puts on this, because that's on top of the wildlife management areas that the state already owns or manages.
Right. On average, we pay, you can do the math. It's been running 3-something. And we upped it. So it's probably going to be $6-ish an acre there, or 5-something an acre across the board, which isn't all that much. If you think about somebody allowing trespass and allowing people to harvest game on their property, and all the potential headaches that come along. Hopefully all of our hunters are respecting landowners and not leaving litter, not dropping gates or ruining fences, things like that. But things do occur.
Yeah.
And they tolerate those things for the payment, knowing that they're allowing people to enjoy the outdoors and continue traditions and stuff like that.
Just that, I think some of them have to have at least a little interest or fondness for hunting and access and knowing that that's part of what is needed out there. If we didn't have a spot to hunt, we obviously wouldn't hunt. But like you said, Michael, it kind of limits sometimes. Do I want to try this? Do I want to try that? Do I have access to that good quality habitat? And there's plenty of things in there. Pheasants is probably pheasants and upland birds, kind of where it got started. Like we said, we've taken grouse off of it. You guys ever taken a deer off of one of these?
I don't deer hunt personally.
You don't deer hunt? Well, you're too busy.
Yeah.
part of that check station crew and all that
Yep.
type of stuff. So, do you work a check station this year?
Yep, I do.
Which one? So our listeners can stop by and
I
say
will
hi.
be at the St. Paul station at the pump and pantry there. So
Oh, all right.
yep.
Does that pump and pantry have an ice cream machine?
I guess they probably
You guess
would.
so.
Yeah.
So I've got to talk to you guys because the first time I was ever put to action in a deer check station, I was in the middle of the National Wildlife Refuge there at Valentine. I think they had me working out of a horse trailer,
Yeah.
which was quite interesting being a kid that hadn't dealt with mule deer and aging mule deer. That I had plenty of mule deer coming through that area. And all right, age this. And I didn't have anybody else with me. So there's probably a little dip in the accuracy of the information that one time out there. But it definitely was interesting to say the least. So that's a fun time to, obviously, but I've taken a deer off there. I've taken turkeys. I think some folks have taken pronghorn off of them as well. And you mentioned elk or even a possibility.
Yeah, we've had a
in some
few
areas.
elk harvested in those Les Canyons areas, and there's other potential now too with all the new units and things that we've changed with elk hunting. So
Waterfowl?
yes, a couple times. I've shot
Okay.
mourning doves. I actually have a couple sites that I
Keep
dove
an
hunt.
eye on. To,
Yep.
I think that's the annual thing, Michael, is you get in here and you go back to your old favorites. Just make sure it's still
Make sure it's still there.
highlighted
Yeah.
in the atlas to make sure, good, it's back in.
Absolutely.
I've lost some, I've gained some.
I've shot both grouse species, bobwhites, pheasants, other small game at times, and we've shot a couple squirrels, a couple rabbits here and there.
I don't know if I've gotten a sharp tail. I've gotten prairie chickens
Yeah.
off of them, but a lot of opportunity, like you said, fishing in some of those areas are a possibility. The water side of the open fields and water program, which is pretty darn neat. This thing, the ones that are in the atlas now, pretty well locked in until next, after turkey season, right?
Yeah, I mean that atlas is valid through the end of the hunting seasons, through spring turkey. Some of those contracts are actually 5-year contracts. No telling where they're at, if you look at them in there. But we do 1 to 5 year contracts with the landowners
Okay.
on those.
So some of them are locked in. I don't have to be as nervous
Right.
on some
Yeah.
of those parcels like I sometimes am.
Fortunately, we must have good behavior by our hunters, and thank you hunters out there for that, because we do have a really high retention with landowners in this program. They're happy with the program. They're happy with the hunter behavior.
Good.
So good job out there, everybody. Keep that in mind though as you're using these sites. And be sure to appreciate landowners if you happen to bump into them and they let you know that it's their property. Make sure you say thank you and really let them know you appreciate the program.
Oh, amen, amen. It's a wonderful thing, and we've got a lot of folks that make use of it year after year. Now, moving forward, I mean, access is something that the agency and you've been involved with for quite a while. Moving forward,
Yep.
Obviously we're going to try to keep some of this stuff around. You guys have some new tricks that are going to be, up
Well,
the sleeve you might be rolling out in the near future?
We are about to hire a new access program manager. We have expanded this enough that we've decided we need somebody that focuses only on this. We actually have applications, and we'll be doing interviews soon, and that new position will be in charge of the current Open Fields and Waters program and, continued development, possible expansion of that. We're also looking at the possibility of adding some restrictive access or reservation-based access down the road. We have a lot of landowners that tell us they would allow people to hunt, but they want to know who's out there. And so we're kind of hoping that niche, if we create it, will appeal to some of those. To where, as long as they know that somebody has a reservation, they can see whose name is on it, that they'll be willing to allow them some access there. We're also going to continue. We're always exploring things with conservation partners and with, even municipalities and places like that to see what other access opportunities might be out there.
Oh, that's awesome. Part of the tenets of our North American model, hunting for all and access being a big chunk of that. So I think we're going to have to kind of end it right there, but I appreciate you coming in.
Can I ask you one question?
Well, yeah, fire away.
Your best memories as a child growing up, what percentage of those are outdoor related?
Oh boy. Probably a good chunk of them those that like we're getting close to Thanksgiving now. So
Yeah.
the indoor, I like food.
Yes.
So most of them that aren't food related, unless it was camping, are probably outdoor.
Right. I think that's the biggest thing we do as an agency, whether it's parks, fisheries division, wildlife division. The biggest thing we do is allow people opportunities to go out there and make those memories. So
Oh, there you go.
that's kind of one of the driving forces behind this. So
Awesome. I made one last night. I was deer hunting on one of these open fields and water area, and I had this button buck that just would not leave. And it bedded down and just kind of went to sleep about 40 yards away. Ruined my hunt and my plan for the hunt. I shouldn't say it ruined my hunt. I was hoping to make some noise, like a rutting buck, and rattle some antlers and all that stuff. But watching him sleep there, I decided not to disturb him. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And that's something I'll remember for some time.
well, I'm hoping to make some memories this coming weekend. My son and his future brother-in-law and I are going to go try Upland Slam. We're going to try to do it in a weekend. So
Oh, there
One
you go.
weekend.
There's a challenge.
I was going to say, and Michael, you talked about perhaps your first Nebraska bird being a Nebraska turkey. There are plenty of turkeys in these sites in this book right here. I can guarantee I've seen some even this year just wandering around there.
There we go.
Just
I'll
wondering,
have to go
wondering
check
if there's
some
anyone
out.
going to be chasing them. So, all right. Well, thanks again, TJ, for stopping by the
Thank you, guys.
cabin here. And
Absolutely.
We'll bug you again sometimes because access is so important. And you've got kind of a fun job that we've got to explore sometimes, all the cool things you're doing. But, folks, appreciate you listening, but make sure you grab a hold of that public access atlas. If you got some more questions, just hit us down in the comments below. But until next time,
Hunt Nebraska, brought to you by your Nebraska Game and Parks Commission.